Okay, hi folks. Welcome back to learning how to read the Characters Transcript. Before we start, I want to know if there are any questions anybody has from last week. You can go to the response and ask by raising your hand, and Deb can let me know, and you can get on. Ask any questions. No questions. All right. Last week, when we wound up, I asked for you to read 3 chapters of the book of Genesis regarding how Jacob came to be called Israel. And I don't know how many of you have done that, but what is the characterization of Jacob in those 3 chapters? How would you call him? What would you say about him in chapters 30 and 31? Anybody want to poke up a word there?
If you have something you want to share, kind of shout it out because I can't see everybody on my screen.
Oh. Yeah.
I'm not hearing or seeing anybody, Blair.
Okay. Well, we're not going to use that tonight. I had figured that I would, but as I went through it, preparing for tonight, we're not going to use it. I would like to call your attention to chapters 30 through 32 of the book of Genesis, so you can read and get a picture of who Jacob was in chapters 30 and 31, and then how is he different after chapter 32 in the Bible. That was a turning point for Jacob, and something happened at that point that gave him his name Israel. I'd like for you to have that as background when we get to it, probably next week. Now, last week we introduced a concept of interpreting the message of the Characters Transcript from the meanings of only 20 Nephite roots. The message, however, does not come from the sounds of words, but from the meanings. And today we're going to demonstrate that with just a few samples. And here's the first slide. I told you last week a bit about how I discovered the key to understanding the writing system of the Nephite. The first thing I was led to see was the meaning of character string G46, right down here at the bottom, G46 to G49. And this is a magnification of those characters right down there in the last section. As I said, I was inspired to know that the general meaning of those characters was gift of God. And it was a year or so later, and I still didn't know what part of those 4 characters was gift and what part was God. But by a year later, I had been working on a hypothesis that the shape of the characters and the meaning of the characters were somehow related. I had, in fact, learned that G46, this character right here, this little short horizontal line, was most probably the record. And the G47, this character, meant from sacred plate writings. And the G49 was a door, a picture of a door, which means by way of. Now, that would mean that this section right here, this character at G48, had both gift and God in it. Now, that was my logic. So I reasoned that God was most probably the bottom cup-shaped curve. The bottom of this is a curve, And that was most probably God. So I started looking in my text for that shape. I found a candidate in the German language book by Bruch, but I couldn't tell from the German's writing because I don't read German that well. But it seemed that they were talking about an earthly authority, a king, a supervisor, and they were routinely called Lord. But I want to know, could it mean God? Was there anything in which that character might mean God? And by that time, I had received a book from Brother Meredith Mitchell, who was our European pastor. He had given me a copy of Budge, a 1910 reference, which you can find in the bibliography of my work there. That he'd given me the book, and I started searching there because it was written in English. And there are almost 250 pages in that book, and it wasn't until page 216 that I found it. And this is what it looked like. Whoop. No, that's the character that I found. The Egyptian, and all you do is take the top part off, and you got the bottom curve. See, that fit like that it does up there. So I began to search through the book, and I finally found in the reference this phrase, and this is just the way. Well, this isn't the way it was in the book, but this is the sequence. It was written in the book: Lord of heaven, Lord of earth, maker of beings terrestrial. Now, the Egyptians called this Neb, and this was Pet. Neb, Pet, Neb, Ta, Ade, Cheru is what the Egyptians would have said. But here was this character. There was Neb, all both identified as Lord, maker of everything. And by the way, Neb in Egyptian not only means Lord, not only does it mean God, it also means all. It means everything. So that one character right there sums up much of the character of God himself. He is everything. Anyway, I finally found God. I no longer had any serious question about what part of this was God. And that meant that the vertical slashes were going to be the gift. There are 4 vertical slashes, and that means that that part was gift. But I found the God character, and that was a major turning point in my search. I want to spend more time on this slide because it has several important things that are interesting about reading of the Egyptian text. Now, the authors of almost every text that I have found on the Egyptian have made everything read from left to right because that's how we read it. But the Egyptians didn't write for us, and they most often wrote from right to left. Now, I'm going to change this so that you can see that right to left is the same. Now, this time we start with Lord of heaven, Lord of earth, maker of beings terrestrial. So that's reading right to left. And this is the way that it would have been done by the Egyptians. This is how you find it in the textbook because they've made it so we can read left to right. But the Egyptian writing was always in the direction that the characters faced. Well, no, there aren't any characters here except for that chick and this man kneeling back here. And here, the same thing, but notice how they're reversed. This is the way that they would appear in the Egyptian text. And that's what the Nephites used. They used those characters in the same direction. But we have to read it from right to left because this says that. You read toward the characters' faces. That meant everything that I'd been looking for in 2 years almost was wrong. If there was a symmetrical form, I found it. Lord is symmetrical, left to right. Earth is symmetrical, left to right. But the eye is not. The chick and the man are reversed. So I'd been looking for 2 years for the wrong thing. No, I've been looking 2 years for the right thing in the wrong direction. So I realized I had to have a mirror image of the hieroglyphics that were in the books before I could find the rest of those connections. Now, we've got 2 lords here, but there are some other figures that are here that are also on your handbook for pictures that are for images in the Nephite roots and so on. Compare those. Look at this. That little box right there represented the door. Remember I pointed it out to you? There's the door in by way of God's gift by way of is what those 2 characters mean. The door is by way of. You go into a door or into a room by way of the door. That's the concept. Now, this is reversed from this. You notice the direction, reading from right to left, P, T. Those are alphabetic characters in Egyptians. P was from the door, represents a door, but that is the P sound of pet. And the little loaf that's to the left here, that little loaf is to the right here without the circle around it. That little loaf is a T sound. And so that is pronounced left to right, pet, right to left, pet. Now, we have the 2 examples of the God cup, which are symmetrical. And that's why I could find those in the first book that I was working on, which is in German. But I couldn't find a lot of these others because I was looking for the mirror image. I should have been looking for the mirror image of it. Now, this character right here stands for land.
Blair,
Yes.
going to interrupt for just a minute. We're not seeing your cursor.
You're not seeing my cursor?
Mhm. There it is.
Thank you for letting
Thanks,
me know.
Roger.
I got to put it on the other screen. You can see it now, right?
Yes.
Oh, you see it. All right, fine. I'll try and keep my eye on that screen. I've been putting it on my presenter screen and thinking that it was projecting over there. A lot to learn here. Okay. Where am I? The box in
You're
pit.
talking about rain cloud. There's Blair, yet the image looks more like clouds of rain, and you're calling it Earth.
Well, you can call it that if you want, but the Egyptians called it Earth. I think of it as being an island with 3 grains of sand or seeds underneath it. That's my picture of why that's Earth. And that's in what we will be reading in the Characters Transcript. Only we don't call it land. The Egyptians called it land. The Nephites were thinking not in terms of the land itself, but the people that live on the land. And therefore, to the Nephites, that became people. And if you look at your handbook, you'll see people is represented by a little straight line. Similar to what we've got here, a straight line, but not near the detail here, just nothing more than a line. That's what the Nephites used to represent people.
Phil had a question, Blair. Do you have time?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, Uncle Blair, I was just going to mention that. I think there was a similar character to represent people, equivalent to the land. So you already mentioned that. So you beat me to it.
This is the way the Nephites did refer to the people, not the land itself. They borrowed from the Egyptians the character, but they used it to represent only the people. So when we read it from the Characters Transcript, we should read it as people and not land. You understand?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay. G48 and G49, then this is gifts. There are 4 vertical slashes here that are gift, and the cup underneath is God by way of. So we could think of that as being gift, God by way of. That is a way of looking at it, but I like to use the more English sort of thing and call that a magnificent gift. 4 repetitions of gift is a magnificent gift, or a marvelous gift. Would that sound Book of Mormonish? A marvelous gift. So we have here a marvelous gift of God. But, there's even more in there than that. You see the dots, you see the straight line, and we're not going to address those tonight. That's other subjects. But we've got gift of God in that character and some other things that are descriptive of this gift of God. It's not only a marvelous gift or a magnificent gift, but it has some other meaning associated with it, and we'll work into that. Okay. Now, I knew I needed to look for mirror images for my hypothesis, and I started to find some of those meanings because I reversed the image when I was looking for them and could now find those things that I'd missed before. So I'm going to flag two more Egyptian characters that are also in the Characters Transcript. We have the earth and the papyrus. Standing here at the papyrus, we'll have a very complex concept here I've got to share with you. We have the horizontal Nephite root, which means people. We have a vertical line, which means plates. You just take my word for it at the moment. We have a vertical line, which means plate, but it's in the form of an Egyptian roll of papyrus. And that's what that little character stands for. To the Egyptians, that glyph represented the papyrus, and it meant a writing or a record. The Nephites took that character as you see it here and used it to mean just plates, the material on which they wrote. The Egyptians wrote on papyrus, but there was no papyrus where the Nephites were. They wrote on metal plates. So they adapted from the Egyptian, the material in which they write is the plates, and the character was papyrus that represented that. The Nephites didn't have access to papyrus. Their prominent vertical line that represented the metal plates on which the Nephites wrote their records. Now, I'm going to show you a rolled papyrus. What's happening here? Oh, I've moved that slide. I'm sorry. At the end, I'm going to show you a way of getting things in mind. But there are three different images that derive from that papyrus symbol. Not only the vertical plates, but there are horizontal lines, and there's also a ribbon on that papyrus. All right, if you got your handbook, you take it out and look at the 20 Nephite roots. It's going into that next. Here's record.
Commenting. I'd like to go back to your door. I'm quite impressed when you call that door the by way of.
Yeah.
Because when my wife came back to me in December after she died in February, she indicated that the portal to joy is always open. But we close it by getting angry, by miscommunicating, by deceiving people. When we slam that door closed, we think it's closed, but from her side, it's always open. And so to have that by way of strikes me as being a beautiful translation of an always open portal to joy.
I like that, Paul. You're picking up on the sense of the meaning of the word rather than its sound. To us, that's a door, but that's the way, is another way to put it. The way, the door. Yeah, I like that, Paul. Thank you. All right. In your book, there's a section, there's a page that says it's 20 Nephite roots. There are 5 of them that are in the shape of circle arcs. Notice that Lord is at the bottom. There's one at the left on the west side that means of. And we have characters of this shape in there that mean of. At the top is a curved character that means cause to be. And we call that on the north side. On the east side is a curved character that represents a tongue. It's derived from an animal's tongue, an ox's tongue. Image of it's on an earlier page in the bibliography. It shows the tongue and how it's shortened to just that little curve. And then down here on the southwest side of the curve, we have an ear. And the ear means to hear or obey. Anyway, those are the ones that are represented by arcs or curves. We can go also, I have not moved my cursor over to the screen so you can see it. Okay. We have lines, straight lines, horizontal. There are 3 of them. The little short one means the, to, for, sometimes this, the, to, the or this, or to or for. The and this, and to and for were represented by the N sound in Egyptian. The N. And originally it was a zigzag line, which you probably will all recognize when you see one, because it represents waves in the water. But over time, those zigzag lines got to be straightened out in a single horizontal line, a short line. That was true in all 3 forms of Egyptian writing. The hieroglyphic writing started out with a zigzag up, down, usually about 6 zigzags across, and that was the sound of N. But it represented water. The water started with an N sound, and that was used both as the definite article and as a preposition. So it could be to or for, to Israel or for Israel. It could be the or this, the plates or the record or this record. The concept is specific, a specific plate, a specific record that would be used. Now, it's possible to combine these things. In fact, they're very often combined. The record could be one straight line, but the people could also be a straight line, and it's difficult to distinguish these. There are subtle hints as we get further into this, there are subtle hints that allow us to separate them out, usually. But that line there for the people, or this line for the record, or this line for thee, you stretch them out, man, you don't know what you got unless you have some background ideas about what's going on. Now, that could be also the people record. One long line. So it's rather difficult. And right now, when I tell you that this means one of those, please accept my judgment at that, because although I've been wrong many times, I could be wrong on this, but for right now, we're learning to read these things. Just listen to what I say and don't figure it out, because we're going to have to go further and deeper in order to figure out some of these differences. But anyway, there are just 3 of those horizontal lines, but they can be extended out considerably. And we'll see that later on. Similarly, there are, here, for example, with a straight line, it's all 3 of them. The people record. I'm not sure you're not seeing it.
You have it highlighted or circled in blue. Is that what you're wanting to see?
No, it's up here in the corner of the right. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I want to draw your attention to. The first one is the people record, and the background of that is those 2 curves is Nephi. So
Blair, it is 7:35 now.
Thank you very much. So you see, this is the Nephite record then. The people, Nephi, and these people record Nephi. So that's the record of the people of Nephi. That is the Book of Mormon. A majority of it anyway. Okay. Now, I've got some more vertical lines. Again, some of these are difficult to separate from one another, but we've got a single vertical line, which we have found now is gift. Then there's one that's highly angled that represents the bone in a piece of flesh. The bone is angled in the images that I find, and that angle refers to an heir or son or descendant. And then there's one that represents from, and then there's the vertical one that represents plates. Now that's the one I was telling you about that derived from the papyrus, the upright papyrus. Now let's go to the last set. There are 8 of these that I just say they're unique shapes. You've got to know them, you've got to recognize them, but there are 8 of them that each one carries its own meaning. For example, this one right here is Christ, and it represents the hind leg of a sacrificed animal. I'm going to ignore and for the moment. Abridged is a circle. It represents a sieve in Egyptian, and the Egyptian sieve sorts or sifts, and that's what one does when one abridges something. They sift through the original to get out an abridgment. That's what Mormon did. Is he sifted through the record of Nephi and made his own reduced or shortened version, which Joseph Smith translated. The Spirit refers to the third part of the Godhead, the Holy Spirit. And here's the ribbon that is on the papyrus that represents writings. There's a dot of promise. You know the dots that are in the gift of God character? Oh, that's a dot of promise. There are 4 promises in there. And this is a thumb. Put your left hand in front of your face, make a fist and stick your thumb out. That's the thumb, and these are the fingers down here. And that means to grasp, to hold tightly to, or to preserve. And then the door means by way of. Those are separate, and each one has got to be recognized as you go through here. We're going to be seeing these so often that I think most of them are going to come naturally. The and, well, folks, the Egyptians did not use and. The Hebrews did. The Nephites did. But the Egyptians used a concept of with. While we would say a table and chairs, the Egyptian would say a table with chairs.
Blair, it's 7:40.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's where we got the and from, is from the Egyptian spelling of with. I'm going to move on now. All right. All 3 Nephite roots from a hieroglyph of a papyrus can be arranged in a specific way. I'm not advancing my slide. Why won't it advance?
You're adding things and making circles.
I'm making circles.
Yeah, record is now circled and plates is now circled, and you've got.
Oh, okay. All right. I've got a problem with it showing up on my screen that obscures much of that you're seeing. The ribbon right here is the Nephite character for writings. This is the way it shows up in Egyptian. This is the way that it shows up in the Nephite writing. It's slightly curtailed here where it attaches to other things. Now, up here at the top, we have plates with writings at the bottom. This is also plates with writings at the bottom. These are plate writings, and these are plate writings, but those 2 different characters are talking about different things about plate writings, and they're side by side in the sentence. So when we get to interpreting what this says, I can tell you what it says, and I'll get to it later next week. This is from Sacred Plate Writings of Christ, plate writings to people of Israel. Now that's what that character says. That character, which is B2, is the brass plates. That's just a preview of coming attractions. All right, here's the Nephite, the ribbon. This is the papyrus with the ribbon on it. And I'm going to take that and twist it around to show it so you can see those. In the vertical position, in a horizontal position, and in just the ribbon. That's the ribbon around the papyrus. What do they mean? In the vertical position, you've got a straight line, which means plates. In the horizontal position, you've got a straight line, which means record. In the ribbon, means writings. So if we take this plates and we put that ribbon on it, we've got that writing, plate writings. Plate writings, aren't those the engravings on the plates? Only I like to use just the idea of plate writings because that is descriptive to me. And instead of calling it the English word plate engravings, I'm going to call it plates writings. All right. Any questions? That's enough for today.
Roger Gilbert has a question.
All right.
Okay, Blair, can you hear me?
I hear you.
My video doesn't seem to be working tonight, so I've got so many questions, I don't know where to start, so I'll give you a couple.
Okay.
On your 20 Nephite roots by shape page, where you've got the 5 curves at the top, I only see a couple of those on the other page, bibliography for root words. Is there a reason for that? Why I'm only seeing 2 there? I thought there were only 20 total, but I don't see the cause to be or the of or the ear.
They are there. You're just not recognizing them yet. And we'll get to the point of recognizing those things a little later on as we go. But they're all there.
Okay.
That's 5 of those 20 that are on that sheet that show the characters and the lines. You're going to have difficulty recognizing some of them, but once you know what they are, then you'll be able to read it.
Okay, so I'm not trained well enough yet.
Nor am I, but that's all right. I can tell you what I've learned.
Okay, one more thing, Blair, on that
Yeah.
page, your bibliography for root words and their origins page, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 references. Are those references showing that, for example, the top one is R1 is tongue? Does
Yes.
it show, those references show the Egyptian of that? Is that what they're all proving out, or are they all used together to kind of make that one?
Very good question. I have those 5 references. The one that I've used the most is the Budge one, 1910, because that was in English. It was short, it was small, it was concise, and I was able to find most of these characters in that book. But I went with every one of those characters. You will find a page reference in each of those books that shows what the author of those books calls that particular character. Now, if you take the door picture, the door image, the little square, for example, can you find that? I don't know what the number is. I don't have that.
It's R19.
Okay. Budge calls that a door in both of his books. The 1910 and 1920 books, calls it a door. Gardner calls it a mat. And I have no idea why. You see, those two authors do not agree. I have pointed out what each author says about those all the way through. Those references are verification that what I say it says is there. Did I answer
one last thing. Yeah, that's good. One last thing. When you look at that same page, you get the Egyptian column and then your Nephite column. Are you using those references to get there, or are you inferring that Nephite character really matches that Egyptian one?
All right, that's a good question. Those books do not confirm anything about Nephite. They're all about Egyptian. What I am showing you there in that reference is that those are the verified statements of those authors regarding that particular Egyptian feature. My interpretation of each of those is how I get the translation. So a tongue can become anything from an account, a language, the word spoken. You see, it's a concept that we've got to deal with, and not necessarily the tongue itself. But the Egyptians referred to that as being the tongue, and anything that was done by the tongue, licking, tasting, sticking your tongue out at somebody. And that's all that reference is doing, is showing that the Egyptians had those meanings attached to them according to the authors of those books.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have 7:50.
All right, I'll get off then.
Oh, you're fine. I'm going to just go ahead and shut off the recording for now.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.